it'll be an exercise in building trust between one another. So Harrison, if you don't mind going first, step up here on this chair and close your eyes. All right, and then everybody fill in, and we're going to ask you to fall, and then they will catch you. So you have to trust us. So I'm going to count to 3. Just relax and fall. Okay? 1, 2, 3. No, wait, no!
Okay, this is a better camera angle. Does this work? I think this works. Emotional support hat in place. Weird shadow. Where's the weird shadow coming from? This is not the right notebook.
Stop.
Alright, let's take a look at how this motion played out and eventually the justification for how the call went. So, Oreo opens up proposition, a very nice explanation of what an imminent threat is. So it really explains where we're coming from when we say that there is an imminent threat that we are striking against, and establishes this as a form of self-defense, okay? So you can't pretend that everything is going to be fine if you can see an attack coming or you can see a threat coming. Oreo also uses some really nice examples. The Ukraine example. So when the Ukraine first saw the assembly of Russian forces, that was a good indication that some bad things were heading their way. A preemptive strike there would have been justified because look what ended up happening in the long run. And then Oreo closes off by saying that it's self-defense and it allows the vulnerable side an advantage, which seems fair. So, off to an excellent start. Opposition 1, Preem comes up and counters and says that, well, we can't trust this, that a preemptive strike could be used as an excuse. No serious action has been taken yet. It's just a threat. It's not an action against you. And then Preem proposes a counter idea where you should stand your ground and wait for the attack. So prepare. Stand your ground, but don't attack first. So I think at this point, the debate is established nicely with two opposite ideas of how we should handle this. Booty comes up as proposition number 2, and this is the thing that I remember in the debate that I want to mention to you guys. Plan your POIs carefully. If you want a POI, make sure that you have thought this through, because Booty handled these POIs incredibly well. Okay, so Baibua says, POIs, how can you assume that someone with a gun pointed at you is threatening or is going to shoot you? Guys, this is not a good use of a POI, alright? Because remember, Booty can accept 1 or 2 POIs and then he's met the requirements. He doesn't have to accept every single POI that comes in. So you've got to make sure that when you have a POI and the speaker accepts it, that you've really got to try and throw them off with a really strong counterpoint or a question that is almost impossible to answer. So Booty responds and says, it's very reasonable to assume that if somebody is pointing a gun at me, I should be worried, okay? It's not unreasonable to sort of see this as a threat. So you've lobbed a soft POI and Booty has hit back really, really well. Okay, so Booty then goes on to build on Oreo's case. We don't have to wait. If you wait, there might not be a country left to defend. So he frames this as a very serious, very dangerous situation, and then argues that a preemptive strike stops a war before it starts. So the POIs here kind of actually worked in Booty's favor because he was able to answer them really well. Leon, okay, so again, Leon, you are sort of backing up what Preem is saying, that it's overreaction to the threat. So you guys went back and forth between this sort of like toy gun or this gun example What if somebody is pointing a gun at you? You know, are you going to stand still and do nothing, or are you going to act preemptively? And so then Leon brings up this idea of, well, what if we're overreacting? What if it's a toy gun? What if the threat isn't that bad? If somebody looks at you weird, are you going to smack them? No, you're not going to slap them. You are, you know, you're just not going to act that way. But then Oryu comes in with a fantastically strong POI, and he says, if somebody's already raised their hand to slap you, they haven't slapped you yet, but they've already raised their hand, you are going to perceive this as a threat, and you are going to react to this. So here, Oryu's used the example that Leon is putting on the table against him really nicely. So we sort of have an example here of where a POI has been used a little bit more effectively. In come our third speakers, and I must say they were the shining stars for this debate. Patrick does really, really nice as Proposition 3. He says, opposition is misunderstanding what an imminent threat is, okay? Waiting to be attacked does not make you moral and holy, okay? Waiting to be shot at first without reacting preemptively doesn't somehow make you good. It just means that you are ignoring a threat and that you are going to be attacked. War is imminent, and so this is a form of self-defense. And Patrick frames this the way that Proposition have been framing this the whole time. This is not starting a war, but responding to one that's going to happen. Should a country really wait to be attacked if they can see that it's coming? Baibua, again, as a closing speaker, number one, Baibua, you have exceeded your time here, and I am going to be much more strict in terms of clapping you guys out at 7 minutes. Baibua, you bring this amazing example of America in 2003 in their war against Iraq. They claimed, ooh, weapons of mass destruction. And it turns out that that wasn't the case. There were no weapons of mass destruction, and America probably had ulterior motives. This is an amazing example. I wanted Preem to bring this example in. You guys are still not quite lining up your arguments the right way, all right? As a team, this point that you are making here in great detail was only very briefly touched on by Preem in the beginning. We can't trust that countries aren't using this as an excuse, okay? But Baibua, you guys have sort of swapped it round. I wanted to hear the example of America in 2003. I wanted to hear about acting on assumed threats because intelligence could be fabricated. I wanted to hear all of that in the foundation of the argument, not in the closing of the argument. At the closing stage, you only recap what's already been said, but opposition has done this the other way around. Preem sort of lightly refers to the fact that it might be used as an excuse, but brings no examples, brings no sort of no evidence to the table. Baibua, you come up as closing speaker, and then you bring all of the examples and all of the stuff that I wanted to see in the foundation, so the stuff that I wanted to see at the beginning. Okay, so Baibua, a good speech, but the team structure hasn't lined up. Proposition have pulled themselves together in a nice, neat line, and they have attacked nice and swiftly and clearly, right? So their arguments all build on each other very nicely. Opposition, you've done it the other way around, okay? You've started with what should have been the recap and then expanded it further towards the end. So it was, in my opinion, an excellent debate on both sides. Tin adjudicated with me. Tin called for side Proposition. I happen to agree with Tin, so congratulations and well done to Tin for calling correctly. The panel is unanimous in their decision to award today's debate to side Proposition. Congratulations to Prop.
Right, we need to do... Right, hang on, let me get a bit of grip. Right, 3, 2, 1. Oh.